And speaking of sick, what about Pam Bondi? So we live in a country where they seem to be totally okay without giving anybody due process, or very few that are being deported, any sort of due process at all. You see, in the Constitution, it says, not if you're a legal citizen, but any person, doesn't emphasize whether you're legal or illegal, deserves the right to due process. That's what it says in our Constitution. These MAGA Republicans that want to talk about the Constitution don't seem to want to recite it when it comes to due process. But you see, if you do something to a Tesla vehicle, Pam Bondi wants you to get 20 years in prison. But if you beat a police officer on January 6th, you're a hostage and you're a patriot. Listen to Pam Bondi's strong language when it comes to Tesla and think for yourself why she's doing this.
Now, MS-13 TDA members, look at the signs behind me on the White House lawn of all these terrorists that Donald Trump has taken off the streets. Not only that, the domestic terrorism, like you said, Tesla, 9 cases in 7 jurisdictions, and we have made it crystal clear, no negotiations. These people are facing 20 years in prison, and that's why it's going to stop. We're fighting anti-Semitism. We had our first task force meeting. We are going forward on so many things. And at President Trump's directive, we are making America safe again, especially by getting these drugs off the street.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you're making America safe again, but let's get rid of and let's pardon a bunch of Jan 6th insurrectionists, some of whom beat police officers. You're making America much safer again. You're certainly making America whiter again. I'll give you credit for that. Yeah, you're making America white again, and you're making the top 1% richer and richer again. You're certainly doing that, but the rest of the country is struggling, and it's why you guys have a 39% approval rating, which is the lowest it's been in over 70 years. And Pam Bondi is a sycophant. And she wears the Donald Trump knee pads 24/7, and I am embarrassed for her. She is so pathetic. Speaking of pathetic, let's talk about Representative Markwayne Mullin, because Caitlin Collins on CNN asked him about the price of eggs because Donald Trump keeps lying about the prices of your groceries. I gave you the statistics for that. I told you that since day one, inflation is up. I told you that over 0.5%. So, and I again, I don't just say things and throw them at a wall and hope that they stick. The numbers that I gave you are literally from the Consumer Price Index data so Markwayne Mullin is making the case that egg prices are down since day one. By the way, they're not. They're actually up 26% since day one. But listen to Caitlin Collins question him, and listen to another Donald Trump MAGA sycophant who's afraid of, saying anything that could contradict what Donald Trump says, even if it's a lie. Have a listen to this.
This is down 22%. And when you start talking to American people, they are excited about where our country is headed.
But if the numbers are as good as the president says they are, I mean, he's wildly exaggerating how much eggs are down. They're not down 87%. If they were, people would be paying 50 cents for a dozen of eggs, which obviously,
well,
that they're
the
not.
fact is they're down. And as I said, at the height.
Right, but why not just say exactly how much they're down?
Well, at the height, it was 9.1%. So it depends on what metric you're using. At 9.1%, they're down to 2.4% now. Inflation. That is a significant drop. That's not 50%. You're getting down to actual real numbers at that point. So it depends on which point you're talking about. We can discuss wherever we want to on the eggs of what source you want to say or at what time frame he may be referring to. The fact is, prices are down, and we see them.
But they're not down as much as he's saying that they're down for eggs. So I'm saying if my
so let's use the math. What's 9.1% down to 2.4%? What's the percentage?
If the numbers are as good as you think they are, and as you're arguing, and that's number from the agriculture department, why not just say they're down 52% or 53% instead of 87%?
Because they're lying for Donald Trump. They are not down 85%. In fact, if you look at the actual consumer numbers that are out there, you look at the data that I already gave to you, they're actually up 26% since day one. Now, they might be down in the last couple of weeks, but that doesn't mean they've been down from day one, because they're not, and that's a lie. And Markwayne Mullin is a complete imbecile. He's the same guy who wanted to physically fight somebody in the halls of Congress because he's a moron. He suffers from short man syndrome, and he is a complete moron. And I've always said this before because I was actually having a conversation with somebody about this yesterday, and she's right, that the men that are in the workout room 20 hours a day and they're gym rats are usually trying to make up for other things in their life, and they're trying to hide something. I would say Markwayne Mullin is a perfect example of that because the man is 4 feet tall.